Today, I want to talk some more about emotions and specifically the Christian life. And why is it that Christians seem to have a lot of difficulty when it comes to navigating emotions and walking through our emotional world? We all have them. We all experience them. We're made with emotional capacity. But why is it that it seems like we have a lot of trouble walking through our emotional world? That's what I want to get into today. So welcome to the Healing and Freedom Journey. Mark DeJesus here. I am your brother from another mother, bringing you insights along the way. I'm all about mental, emotional, and relationship health. And if you are too, you have arrived at a great place. God created us as humans to think, to feel, and to relate. As I mentioned, my channel is all about mental, emotional, and relationship health. And it's important to understand that God made us with emotions to help us connect and relate in powerful ways. And so with that, there are a variety of emotions that we'll experience along the way. And in our lifetime, you're going to have a lot of valleys and mountaintops, and some emotions, we welcome them very easily, right? We welcome them. Other emotions make us very uncomfortable. They can be challenging. They can stretch us to the core. Emotions involve a variety of feelings that we actually need to learn to work through. But there's some hindrances that don't allow us to actually work through our emotional world so we can heal, mature, and grow in life and actually thrive and flourish. So today I want to get into why do Christians struggle with emotions? What's the deal with that? So often we think our emotions are something maybe we need to suppress or ignore. Just get them out of our life. Get it away, get it away, get it away. But what if we recognize their emotions are actually something God designed us with as a part of our journey of connecting with Him, with our journey, and with others in deeper, more meaningful ways? But we got to learn how to navigate our emotional life in healthy ways. And I know for me, I didn't have a grid in knowing how to navigate emotions. What about you? As a Christian, were you taught how to relate to your emotions in productive ways, even the troubling ones, what we call negative emotions? Well, today I'm hoping that what I share with you will help you to navigate your inner emotional world with greater effectiveness. So let's get into this. And before I get into those reasons, I want to share a couple things up front. And these are kind of simple, but they're very, very important. Understanding your emotional world. This one is that non-Christians often have a hard time with emotions too. This isn't just a Christian thing. This is not me just picking on Christians, but there are certain hang-ups I want to address in Christianity that keep us from emotional depth. Many cultures, people groups, there's a lot of this in society where for centuries people have dealt with emotions. They had emotions they had to face and work through, but they didn't necessarily face them and work through them. We can often see historically how much emotions in our emotional life have actually been dismissed. The second part I want to bring before I bring up my points about Christians is many families do not relate to emotions in a healthy way. So if I was to talk to you about your struggle with emotions, the first thing we'd want to talk about is what was your grid growing up? What was the culture like in your family? In a lot of homes, a lot of families, emotions were not talked about or worked through. Many emotions are uncomfortable for parents. They didn't get equipping in them, so therefore they didn't have a whole lot to pass down unless they got significant work and help themselves. Many look back at their history and they had a lot of emotional neglect. How you were doing or what you were going through emotionally was something there wasn't a lot of room for. So you may have felt isolated in the emotions, the negative emotions that you felt, and dismissed. So therefore, you felt like you were all on your own. And that can lead us to many unhealthy, unproductive, unfruitful patterns when it comes to our emotions. Now, many people, when I talk to them and work in the life of their heart, they can see, well, we dealt with emotions a lot in our family. But what they really had was a lot of emotionalism, a tendency to indulge in emotions, or there's extreme forms of emotions. There may have been a lot of chaos, a lot of what we call drama going on. And so they think they have a reference for emotions. We have a lot of emotions going on. But what they're experiencing And expressing is a reference for a lot of emotional instability. Many have experienced complex trauma. And so with that, there was a lot of emotional upheaval going on in their life. And many times people who grow up with complex trauma don't know what to do with just peace and quiet. It's like they almost need intensity of drama in order to feel normal or their version of normal. They don't know what to do with peace and an absence of conflict, an absence of crisis going on. Some families are very hyper positive. As soon as there's a problem, they turn it around. Turn that frown upside down. There's always a quick antidote. And it's a very all or nothing kind of approach. Make it positive real quick. It doesn't allow for the room in the journey of working through the troubling emotions. A lot of what I'm going to direct us back to is emotions are meant to be worked through. Many families just wanted things to look okay and look great, and don't want the family looking bad. So a lot of emotions were suppressed. So before I get into this and talk about the Christian life and the church, the body of Christ, and our relationship to emotions, what was your family upbringing? That's an important question to ask. You can even put in the comments, what was your family like when it came to emotions? Write something down there. Help me out and others to not feel alone in the neglect or maybe in their traumatic world or in the dismissal they experienced growing up. I also want to bring about that some emotions are uncomfortable, especially if you haven't gotten training or help or the ability to recognize, name an emotion, not be afraid of it, work through it, allow it to work through you, and learn. So especially the emotions like sadness, anger, anxiety, or even guilt or regret. So we're often left to deny them, do something quickly to get them out because we feel a lot of shame about even having a difficult emotion. But I've found in my life and in my decades of ministry work, the more that I allow myself to grow, the more that I value emotions, I want to help people with emotions and train and equip people to navigate their own emotional world, which I see as a very, very powerful aspect of discipleship. But we haven't always seen that. But there's beauty to be found even in our most difficult emotions, but we have to learn to see that. So, okay, let me get into some top reasons Christians have a hard time with emotions. Number one is many Christians see emotions from a sin or not sin perspective. This is one of the top that I put this right at number one. It opens up for a lot of black and white thinking. It opens up for a lot of quick fixing. It opens up for a lot of push it away, get it out of there, because as believers, we are not making peace with sin, right? The problem is emotions have a spectrum to them, and there's complexities to it and nuance. It's not every emotion is not just a get it out, keep that one, get it out. And many of them are emotions we have to learn how to walk through. David himself even said if I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, that's a picture of some really intense emotions that he's working through. For some in Christianity, it can drive them to look to a demon label with emotions. And then we're now labeling all these emotions with demons. So if it's a demon, then we got to get this thing out. It's got to be cast out, renounced out, get out now. And while I believe in spiritual warfare, and I believe in recognizing true aspects of sin and God's sanctification work in our life, it gets very confusing when you slap a very intense, often legalistic, often very black and white perspective of emotions. It doesn't allow us to walk through the relational journey that's involved in some of these emotions that we are often avoiding, okay? In Christianity, we can be okay with emotions like peace and smiling or even joy, although joy we can sometimes be uncomfortable with and don't know how to deal with joy. But calm, confidence, it's just like that kind of like everything seems okay. We're good with that. But any difficult emotions, we slap a sin category, get it out, and then we go to quick fixes. The problem is that emotions like sadness can actually lead you, if you process it in healthy ways, in learning how to grieve, learning how to work through things that bother you, or disappointments or heartache. Anxiety even can show you where greater love is needing to be experienced. Perfect love casts out fear, the Bible talks about. It can also point to areas where we need to take a step of faith and face our fears. When we feel emotions like guilt, we can automatically think we got to quickly fix it, when in reality, guilt can often reveal patterns of people-pleasing, performance-based living, perfectionism, codependency. It can reveal a web of patterns that actually need some healing, but we compulsively just try to fix and eradicate the guilt as much as possible. Guilt is often a tough one. That's why I have a whole series on toxic guilt. I have a whole series on shame. Even an emotion that we can put into the category of lust, right, or certain desires, can actually reveal that we are needing to get rooted and connected into the love of the Father, which helps satisfy and bring about a sense of connection to who God is, so that healthy desire can flow. We look at the dangers of lust, so we take desire and we just throw it out the window. So now anything you desire, we feel bad about. So you can see this gets out of hand very, very quickly. A sin focus puts a black and white label on every emotion and negates the journey that many of us are on, that we're all on. It negates process. It negates the working through. It dismisses the in-betweens of life. We celebrate in testimonies the great things that happened, but do we take in the in-betweens of life? Throughout the Bible, there's a lot of in-betweens. There's months, there's days, there's years of in-betweens. And we shame them, we dismiss them, we don't make room for it. So whenever we're feeling a difficult emotion, we just want it to go away, and then we're incessantly trying to fix, instead of embracing this journey with Christ where God is walking with us, he's patient with us and gracious. This sin obsession kind of focus too will really do a number on those who are what I would call extra sensitive, who have sensitive hearts, who are more on the sensitive side, and they look at it as a bad thing. They look at it as a liability. I myself, growing up, had a sensitivity, and even being a guy, it's like, what do you do with that? In some situations amongst men, it's like, oh, if you have emotional connection to something, or if you're sensitive, it must mean you're just feminine. And we kind of just, it's a way of dismissing the depth that's there. Because sensitivity isn't wrong. It just needs to be loved and nurtured and recalibrated and shown how to utilize it in a very, very powerful way. Many times in Christianity, though, you can see emotional difficulties as having a lack of faith. How many of you have bumped up against this one? It's just quickly slapped with a lack of faith, so hurry up and get over it. There's a lot of forms of get over it in Christianity that can show up. Some of it is just be happy in God. Come on, if you're really saved, you shouldn't feel that. Or if you're more Pentecostal charismatic, it's get the devil out, get the demon out. Just lift up your praise and shake it off. Now, there's room for those kind of things, but they get overplayed, overused. And so now we lack depth. And this is one of my concerns with my brothers and sisters in Christianity is our lack of having depth in our life because we haven't gone through the valleys. And this lack of faith kind of perspective, quickly just slapping that onto everything, can create hyper-positive environments. And so it gives no room for those who are struggling because then we're just responding to them with quick pick-me-up kind of statements. And it leaves us immature in a lot of ways. Number 3, and this is a concern of mine, especially when it comes to mental health, is many connect their emotions so much to God speaking to them, and which can lead to unhealthy patterns. I'm not against it, but I have a lot of concern with how much the Lord told me, God told me, Holy Spirit showing me, God said, creates this stamp around how we interpret our emotions. And what it doesn't do, it doesn't leave room for somebody else to give some feedback. And so it can lead to a lot of unhealthy ditches. Many can attribute their fearful feelings. God's trying to tell me something. Many can think condemnation that they're feeling is God speaking. or many times a disturbance is God trying to do something. And so I am constantly fielding this God told me pattern that goes on constantly. And I'm concerned about it because it doesn't make room for the counsel of other believers, the sharpening as we talk. And many can't make room for, maybe I didn't hear from God. And a lot of times in our journey, we're chasing emotions and going, that's God, and just labeling it that. And that can lead to a lot of immature patterns as well. Another one that I want us to recognize is we easily shame and condemn ourselves over troubling emotions. So you're feeling depressed and then you shame yourself for even having that. And now you have two problems. And I'm not for having more problems. We got enough things that we're battling already. And so we don't want to look like a bad Christian. And many of us go, what's wrong with me? We can hear preaching that kind of inflames that as well too. Instead of seeing there's great learning in the valley of our emotional world. We can easily label ourselves with our emotions and shame, and what you're going through becomes a sense of identity. So you never get a chance to learn in your emotional journey and mature your reactions, because we need practice in this area. We need practice in what we're going through. Many can find, if they're honest, that they're actually afraid of their emotions. They're afraid of their emotional world. I think many church leaders, pastors, teachers are afraid of emotions, are afraid of dealing with it. And many in their mental health journey are afraid. Oh, goodness, if I really go there, what's going to happen? I can't handle that. I'm going to lose my mind. I'm going to have a nervous breakdown. And so fear really gets in play here when it comes to navigating our emotional world. Now, as Christians, we can be honest that you've heard emotions preached against often. So many people's battles in the body of Christ have been dismissed as you're too wrapped up in your feelings. Well, there may be some truth to this. People are not given sound, gracious, firmly rooted tips and precepts, perspectives on walking through their emotional world. You're just told, you're too emotional. Stop looking at your feelings. So we get rid of of uncomfortable emotions. We get rid of them as quickly as possible. Another thing that we can do that's an error is that we can mix having an emotion with being controlled by an emotion. Now, just because you have an emotion rising up doesn't mean this is who you are. It doesn't mean this is who you're always going to be. It doesn't mean that because you have an emotion showing up that it has to drive your whole life. No, we got to learn to relate to them in healthy ways. But I would say number 1 and number 8 are the top of the list in what I see. Number 8, let's be honest. The emotions people go through are too messy because life is messy, right? Now, God is very content and very capable and very powerful and very ready to walk with us through any emotion that we have, any of them. And he's willing to walk along with us and help us learn to heal, to grow, to mature, to gain freedom, right? But let's be honest. When you look around, look in your own life. Before you start looking at others, look at your own life. Yeah, emotions are messy, aren't they? And in order to help other people and be a benefit to other people in their emotional world, you have to have experience in working through your own. And this is something I can pick up on quickly, and I'm sure you can too. You can very quickly pick up on a believer that's not navigated their own emotional world because of how they respond to other people's emotions. They quickly judge, quickly shame, quickly condemn. They quickly accuse. They dismiss. They talk down at people's battles with contempt. It's revealing they haven't had a sober realization of their own emotional world. And I truly believe that pastors, teachers, mentors, and those who are discipling, which all of us should be contributing to blessing others and discipling others, we need to be speaking on emotions, our emotional world, and calling believers to a greater depth. But it's not quick fix things. It's not a bunch of platitudes. It's not cliches we just throw at them. And I firmly believe, it's a conviction of mine, is that working through emotions is a major aspect of discipleship. We see discipleship as learn a bunch of biblical facts that we then compile into doctrine. get those things right. And it has its place. I value it, and I continue to want to guard it, steward it, grow in it. But we've dismissed our emotional world as a part of discipleship. But the reality is we'll be very ineffective. We'll be very ineffective if we don't learn how to process emotions and be a blessing to others in their own world. Now, I want to leave you with a few things because I don't want to just leave it there. I want to give you a few things that are important to remember about emotions. I have a whole page about emotions. You can go click on my topics page. I have a whole library, and if you go to emotions there, you can find more about it. But I want to give you some things that are helpful as reminders. One is that emotions are how we connect, bond, and relate. So yes, you go through difficult ones. Don't look down on them because it's all a part of how we're learning to connect with God, ourselves, and other people. It's important to always remember, too, that thoughts and emotions are connected. Many times when I hear certain preachers, they talk as though emotions are over here and thoughts are over here, and just change those thoughts. No. It's a myth to think that you interact with your thoughts and emotions separately. Emotions are what make us pay attention to certain thoughts and not other thoughts. With every thought comes a corresponding emotion. So even a person who goes, I don't get lost in that emotion stuff. It's not true. The emotions are what bring about attention to certain thoughts. On what we need to do is learn how to walk through them. And now I firmly believe without compassion and without grace, working through emotions will be very unfruitful. You'll be quick to judge. You'll be quick to shame. You'll be quick to condemn. You'll be quick to jump to the get over it. You'll just try to fix yourself as quickly as possible, that you don't actually do the work of working through emotions. When you jump to fix, I feel sad, let me get this feeling out of me, you don't actually gain the learning of walking through it. Get this anxiety away from me, get it away from me. You don't actually learn to do the work. So while there's many different approaches and things that help people, I'm against quick fix responses. I've jumped to them myself for way too long, and it compounded the journey's work. It made it even more burdensome. Compassion points us to God's love, his embrace to us, his patience, and his kindness, and everything that love brings about. Grace is his empowerment at work. It's his work that we're receiving. It's what Christ did and is doing and continuing to do in our lives as a result of his death and resurrection and the life that he lived. And we're gaining that. We're walking in that. It's important to realize, too, that emotions are temporary. We tend to see something as, oh my goodness, I'm going to struggle with this for the rest of my life. Just understand this. Emotions are like waves. They come and go. And certain times the waves get higher. Certain times the waves get calmer. And sometimes you're wondering, why is this happening? And maybe it's just not a specific reason. You're just kind of going through some different waves. But there can be things that we can learn. The problem is we get stuck in two ditches when it comes to emotions. One ditch is we drown in them. We drown in the emotions. Or we suppress them. We deny them. We get them away as much as possible, right? And I see these in the church a lot. We need to recognize that emotions are like waves, and it's okay. We need to learn to have a nurturing response to them and to be more effective, because emotions can be indicators. Now, they're like gauges on a dashboard. They can tell us something needs a bit of attention. They give us information about maybe ourselves, our history, or our environment. Now, I will tell you this, emotions are not the boss, but they can give information that can be helpful, providing we have good equipping. Negative emotions, that's what we like to call them, like anxiety, anger, for example, can tell us things about our pain, what we struggle with, and areas of our thinking that are fueled by brokenness along the way. For another example, sadness can indicate a loss, and losses need to be grieved through. Or maybe it's telling us, when we get angry, maybe that anger is communicating, hey, a boundary's been crossed here, or an injustice has happened, or something wrong has been justified. And so we see Jesus and David both being examples of a wide spectrum of emotions, obviously Jesus being our perfect example. So they can be indicators. Now, The key for that, because many struggle with this, is the key to emotional health is how we interpret our emotions. I do a lot of talking about interpretation, especially for those who are obsessors. I do a lot of work with perfectionists and obsessive compulsives, and they have a toxic interpreter. And their emotions take them into all these unfruitful tangents that usually lead them into compulsive checking and introspecting and compulsive behavior. And so it's important, but not just for OCDers. It's important for all of us that we learn how to grow in the meaning and interpretation of our emotions, because that then leads us to the meaning and interpretation of where we feel we are, where we've come from, and where we're going. It's a big deal, but we haven't had good equipping in it. And this is where healthy therapy, counsel, coaching can be very effective, is in how you interpret, providing that you allow someone to give some feedback to how you're interpreting your emotional world. Because many times we're looking over here with our emotion, and it's like, no, have you considered this? And that can be very, very helpful. And I find that emotional maturity calls for two things. One is sobriety, and the other is self-control. Sobriety is seeing things the way we need to see them, not denying them, not drowning in them. Self-control is something that must be learned and cultivated, where an emotion shows up, but it doesn't dictate us, and we're able to let it work its way through, so that we have a greater sense of navigating our decisions and navigating steps that we're going to take, because our emotions are not controlling us. And as I mentioned, emotions can be indicators, but they do not need to be the master or boss. You can feel something. That doesn't mean it has to dictate the show. And the way that we grow in that is we learn how to process emotions. Emotions need to be processed. And that can be helped by simply naming it. Do you know how to name the emotion you're feeling? And many of us have a very small vocabulary of emotions. You may need to go out and copy one of those emotion wheels online to expand your emotional vocabulary, which can then enhance your emotional intelligence. Because if you can find a more accurate name, sometimes that can lead you to a little bit more what's going on. Now, we compassionately interpret it. We don't go into harsh judgment. We don't go into condemnation, the shaming and all that. And we let the learning bubble up. Is there something I can learn about this? I seem to struggle with this a lot. What's a theme that's going on here? And if it doesn't show up in that moment, it's okay. It doesn't mean you have to build a campsite and stare at it now for the next 24 hours. But you're letting yourself learn. And emotions, as they wash through, we learn over time. We give space for the emotions to work through us. And God is very gracious with us along the journey. But keep in mind that emotional health takes learning, and it takes practice. You have to give yourself room to practice this, and each time learn. If you're open to learning, you'll grow in your emotions. If you shame, condemn, quick fix, shove it away, deny it, all that stuff, or hyperreact, you're not going to gain emotional learning. But if you keep practice, keep learning in grace, growth will happen. But I believe the body of Christ needs to gain a sense of appreciation for emotions and help our brothers and sisters to be voices to one another in our emotional world. And in my pastoring, I certainly have seen where many pastors will struggle with going into emotions, A, because I think they struggle with their own emotional world, but B, they feel overwhelmed with those who drown in their emotions. It brings out people who drown in their emotions, right? And there's something I want to say about that, because in my pastoring, I'd see many, many people that they were drowning in what they're struggling with. And so it feel like it was just pulling the resources of everybody. So we're like, just keep it moving. We don't know what to do with this person. Or back when I had the church that I pastored, pastors in the area would go, you need to go to Mark's church. And while I get it, I understand it, and okay, I appreciate that you see the value and bring help here, I think we all need to be able to know how to navigate our emotional world and help those who are even drowning. And those who are drowning in their emotions, it's revealing they have had so much emotional neglect that they often become very prone to self-pity, self-loathing, to victim thinking, to despair. And so when certain emotions get triggered, they spin out at it and don't know how to recover. So they're always drowning. And what we are needing, though, is mature people that can be examples of how to be able to walk through. We need some people that have gone through the trenches. And I believe that many of you are those who have gone through and are going through the trenches. You can be a light. That doesn't mean that you have to carry everybody's burdens or respond to everybody's calls and pull on you, but you can model what you've learned in your own life and in your own journey. Which of the points that I brought out today was helpful to you? And which would you add to the list? Feel free to put in the comments. What's a reason you'd put in there of why Christians struggle with emotions? I'd love to hear about it, and it'll help me learn. If this was a blessing, click that like button and subscribe. Of course, you can also go over to markdejesus.com. You can click on the donate button if you want to support these broadcasts, but there's also a topics page. There's a books page where you can see all my books and resources that have come out. I've got a healing and freedom community for those who want to take a deeper investment, but it's been an honor to share this with you. Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. This is your brother from another mother saying I'll be back with more insights for your healing and freedom journey. But in the meantime, I'm out.